Hey, all you minties, this is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition. That's right. So, today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite comic book artists of all time. So this is part 2. I did number 20 through 11 last week, so if you haven't checked that video out, I suggest you do so if you want to. But today, we're focusing on the countdown from 10 to 1, so please stay tuned. And welcome back, all you minties. Now, before I get started, I wanted just to remind you all that if you have not subscribed to the channel, please think about subscribing. We put out videos every day. And if you enjoy these type of videos, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be making more lists. I just want to remind everybody, you won't see any mangaka, so you won't see any manga artists on this list because that will be a separate list for another video. The other thing is that this is all subjective. This is just my list. So yours is different. Yours could be the same. I don't know. Maybe we share the same favorite artist. Leave those comments down below regardless of what you think, whether you hate this list or not. The other big thing I wanted to talk about really quick is this book right here, Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, The Invisible Art. Now, this is a book that will make you appreciate the artist so much more. Whether you're new to comics, whether you're old to comics, you've been reading comics for 30 or 40 years, this book will make you appreciate this art form so much more. And I was lucky enough to read it in my 20s, and it's just things that I didn't even think about. So I will leave a link in the description where you can find this. But I highly recommend this book, and I don't see enough people talking about it. But it's Understanding Comics. So, kicking off the list, number 10, Mobius. Now, Mobius is a name that you'll recognize from comic books, also movies, video games. The man was everywhere. Mobius, whose real name was Jean Gerard, is an artist that lived and worked in comics for over 50 years. He not only worked in comics, but he also revolutionized the art form. And what put his art on the map for a lot of people outside of the US was this comic book in 1963 called Blueberry. Now, Blueberry is worldwide known. Here in America, we're lucky. I think there's 3 or 4 volumes that have been translated, and that is it. But it's a Western story set in the 1800s. And he ended up staying for a while, and he left that series and to pursue his own art style. And he changed everything from the moment that he left. Not only his artistic signature to Mobius, but also the way that we looked at comics. So I'll use this as an example. He had this book called Arzak, and I hope I'm saying that name right. And within the pages of Arzak, he just wanted to do his own thing. So he let the story be told just through pictures. So there's no dialogue. And we've seen that used since then, right? We've seen it, hell, the whole month of Enough Said from Marvel Comics, where every issue was silent, was done in this style where they let the art just tell the story. And that was way ahead of its time. It was the first time I know that I've ever heard of any comic book ever using it, just the art telling the story. So the entire story is silent. And he is one of the true masters, and sadly no longer with us. But Mobius, number 10. Number 9, Joe Madureira. Joe Mad. You've heard me talk about these Western artists that were inspired by anime, such as Michael Golden and Arthur Adams, who was on my last list. But to me, Joe Mad is the guy that perfected that beautiful amalgam of Western and anime style. It was insane. He was so talented at an early age, it's not fair. At 16 years old, he was doing work for Marvel. By the time he was 18, 19, he was doing Uncanny X-Men on a monthly basis. He was the artist of Uncanny X-Men. That's insane. 18 years old, I didn't even know what I wanted to do with I'm 42 and I still don't know what I want to do with my life. He was living the dream. While there were other artists that were doing a similar style like Humberto Ramos or Jeffrey Scott Campbell, Joe Mad was in your face with the anime. There were characters in Uncanny X-Men that were wearing giant Robo shirts. Hell, there were characters that were literally right off of the anime Ninja Scroll to be put into an Uncanny X-Men issue. Even when Uncanny X-Men was getting really rough to read at times, what kept me buying them was Joe Mad's artwork. Of course, he's moved on from comics since then and focused more on video games. But I would love for him to come back and at least finish Battle Chasers and give us one last hurrah at an X-Men story, because I loved his designs. Yes, they were anime-ish, but who cares? They were amazing. Number 8, Nicola Scott. Now, Nicola Scott that is a name that I've been following for a long time, ever since the pages of Birds of Prey, where I first saw her artwork. From there to Secret Six to Wonder Woman, her art has just evolved and evolved, and now she is doing the best work I've ever seen in her life, and that is in the Black Magic series with Greg Rucka. She's always had this perfect blend of realism and comic pizzazz. I guess that's the best way to describe it. She's able to capture emotions, so to me, she draws like the best facial expressions. You feel what the character is thinking and feeling in those pages. So when it came to portraying emotion on panels, she is one of the best artists for that. And I think, like I mentioned, Black Magic, her art in that book right now, it is beyond the things that she was doing back when she first started in Birds of Prey. And I love following an artist from the beginning to where they are now. Number 7, Ivan Reis, or Ivan Reis. Sorry, I'm not really sure how to pronounce his name, but damn, did this guy blow up. I remember he was the artist that took over Green Lantern back when Jeff Johns was writing the title. And one of the things I noticed was he had a very similar and clean and crisp style, maybe a little more detailed than Alan Davis or Brian Hitch. And that was the thing that stood out to me. But the more I kept reading those issues and the more that it led into something like Blackest Night, I became a fanboy. Hell, it was the moment that he was drawing Blackest Night that, in my eyes, he surpassed my favorite Green Lantern artist, and that was Ethan Van Sciver. Because his art was just so top-notch. Because I didn't think he could do horror because of his style, but man, he was able to pull off some of the darkest things in that book. I loved his artwork. And the other thing about Ivan is that he is really quick. So he's able to put out a monthly book. So when he was doing Jeff Johns' Aquaman, that book was on a schedule because of him. And since then, he's been working on Justice League. And there are panels that he's drawn in his later time here, in the last few years, that rival those of the phenomenal and legendary George Perez. So that's why he's on this list. Number 6, Mike Mignola. Of course he's on this list. I've talked about how much I love Hellboy. I've talked about how much I admire artists that can do light and dark and that contrast and just master it. And to me, it gets no better than Mike Mignola. And Hellboy is probably the prime example of the best work he's ever done. But he has been around for quite a number of years. He has this blocky geometric art style that stands out above the rest. Yes, there's a lot of copycat artists out there, but they cannot do his work justice. There is only one Mike Mignola. His art style is so much more complex than that, though. It's like he borrowed elements from the Italian Renaissance painters when you look at his settings, or classic comics when you look at his characters, or just the detailed machinery that he draws, definitely inspired from like the Industrial Revolution. And it's only when you look at the entire work that he's done, not just a few little comics here and there, that you learn to appreciate how great of an artist that he is. At this time, I just want to remind you all to please smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet. Oh, and again, don't forget to check out Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. It will help you appreciate the medium so much more. Number 5, John Byrne. Regardless of how you feel about the man personally, especially these days, he was a trendsetter back in the days that made him into a freaking rock star. Back when he was doing Iron Fist, Fantastic Four, and X-Men, that cemented his reputation as the go-to artist. And, the fact that he started writing and drawing the books just helped that reputation. When you go back and look at his early stuff like in Iron Fist or Uncanny X-Men, before he got to the Alpha Flight or Fantastic Four, you see that he was more like Neil Adams or Jim Aparo for that matter, and using almost the John Buscema Marvel way of drawing panels. So his panel layouts were very much what the classic Marvel artists were doing at the time. And to me personally, he was the first artist, I know I've told this story here before on, I think, a live panel episode, but he was the first artist that I noticed that his women stood out to me. There's one particular panel, that one there with Sauron, and I'm not even focused on Sauron, I'm talking about Storm. And the way that he drew those curves on Storm, damn. I was like, oh, okay. So that's what type of woman I like. Cool. So John Byrne is on my list, not just for that reason, but that panel defined the kind of women that I like. So that goes a long way with me, and that's why he's number 5. Number 4, Alex Ross. How blessed are we that we have a painter, a classical painter, a guy that could be just doing movie posters, that could be just doing billboards or designing classical paintings and getting rich off of that loves the comics medium and loves drawing comics. We are so blessed that we have somebody like that. And he is a damn good artist too. His panel layouts are solid. His character designs in Astro City and Earth X are top notch. Makes you kind of wish that he was drawing those issues within. And you can't mention Alex Ross and not talk about the beauty that is Kingdom Come or Marvel's. Probably if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably choose Kingdom Come just because I love alternate futures or possible future storylines. But the designs of the older characters, there's so much love that went into those. Like, you could tell the guy was a fan of comic books and the way that he drew and designed those characters at an elder age. And his writing isn't that bad either, because he wrote that one issue of Superman in Thy Kingdom Come storyline in JSA. And he has a big following outside of comics too. I think his First Lady Barbara Bush actually bought one of his original paintings. He told me that story when I met him at a convention. But yes, Alex Ross deserves a spot on this list, and you all probably saw this coming. Number 3, J.H. Williams III. This is an artist, at least to me. Now, part of the graphic narrative is how it makes the readers feel through the pictures. You can have a psychological breakdown of a character, and if you choose the wrong artist for that project, it would ruin the entire book. J.H. Williams has this uncanny ability to come in and set the tone of the book before you even read the first word of dialogue or caption. You know what you're in for just based on his art. And I'm cheating a little bit here because I'm using these 2-page spreads to showcase his artwork, but that is the only way to do it justice. He also has the ability to mimic several different artists' styles too. When I was reading Seven Soldiers, I thought that it was different artists doing the one-shot. Nope. It was just J.H. Williams changing his style to suit each chapter. I had no idea it was the same guy. And of course, this takes years to perfect, right? It's him evolving his style to what it is today. And whether you're reading Promethea, Sandman, Overture, or Batwoman, my gosh, you'll be asking yourself, how in the hell can a comic book be so visionary and spiritual at the same time as presenting an amazing, exciting story? That's the way that J.H. Williams makes me feel. I don't know about you all, but that's why he deserves a spot on my top 3. These last 2 were hard because they kept going back and forth. Who do I choose? One over the other. But it all came down to pretty much my childhood and how I felt and how the stories resonated with me. So, number 2 on the list, you saw this coming. Jim Lee. I'm a child of the 90s and 80s. Of course I was going to put him on the list. His art, to me, is the definition of perfection. Hell, number 1 best-selling comic book of all time, X-Men number 1, Jim Lee. Yes, you could say that it was Chris Claremont that had to do a lot with those sales, of course. But let's be real, even me, who is the biggest Chris Claremont fanboy, can admit that a lot of the sales of that book, probably maybe most, had to do with the artist on it, and that was Jim Lee. The amount of detail that he draws in each panel. There are panels that you see characters, like their eyebrows. The hairs on their eyebrows are going different ways. The nails that they've bitten on. And I'm not talking about splash pages. I'm talking about individual little panels. It is insane, the minute detail that he pays attention to. There are so many epic scenes to me, of course, in the 90s, right? The Rogue fight with Miss Marvel from 269. And, of course, the infamous bathtub scene with the well-placed bubbles. Thanks a lot, Jim Lee. Even as a kid, I had an imagination. No bubbles were going to stand between me and Rogue. Or Psylocke. Let's just be serious. Like Psylocke in issue number 8, right? Not only that, but how many kids, how many young men or women had the Marvel swimsuit special, the Psylocke poster from that, pinned up on their wall, right? How many of us did that? Me neither. I didn't do that. Not me. And it's weird to go back and think about how influential he was in the comic books, and still is, because we have these things called Jim Lee clones for a reason. Studios themselves were searching out Jim Lee clones, knowing that, oh, Jim Lee's leaving the book, we gotta find some artist that draws like him. Whether it was a Wildstorm, whether it was a Marvel or DC, they were searching for Jim Lee clones. And it started a whole generation of artists that wanted to be just as good as him. And damn, it was really close between him and my number one, but number two is Jim Lee. Now, before I talk about my number one, this is the hardest part because a lot of these artists I wanted to include. I should have done a top 100 list, but who the hell wants to see that? Me go on for hours talking about my favorite artists and why. So here's some honorable mentions because these people are so special and I wanted to put them on the list. But Todd McFarlane, Chris Bacalo, Michael Turner, Jay Lee, Tim Sell, Joe Kubert. Joe Kubert, who started. How did I not put Joe Kubert on this damn list? Jim Aparo, Juanjo Guardino, Will Spartacio, Todd McFarlane. I already said that, didn't I? That's how much I liked him. Paul Smith, Sean Phillips. Damn. There's so many artists I wanted to add. But let's go to my number one. Without wasting any more time, Marc Silvestri. This one may come as a shock to you, a lot of you, because, I'm sure a lot of you thought Jim Lee was my favorite artist. Why not Jim Lee, right? Why not Todd McFarlane? And it has a lot to do with my childhood and the books I was reading at the time. It was X-Men and Wolverine. And to me, Silvestri evolved that Jack Kirby and John Buscema art style and just made it into his own thing, his own sketchy thing. He is the best to me at storytelling. Just look at the way that he lays out his pages, his panels. I love his artwork. And I mentioned sketchy earlier when I was talking about him, but that's the way his art is. It's rough. It looks unfinished. He doesn't sit there with a ruler and does the perfect cross-hatching. No, he just lets it be. It's wild. It's crazy. And in a way, that's the way that life is, right? It's not perfect. And it's crazy to make that connection. I don't even know why I'm going this philosophical, but because I'm talking about comic books where there's a god of thunder that can summon lightning because of a magical hammer, or a guy that has adamantium claws popping out of his hands, his forearms really. But that's the way he is, and that's my childhood was, damn, his art is perfect, but in a non-perfect way. And yeah, Marc Silvestri always has been. I've met him several times. Very tall guy. And I shook his hand. I always tell him, man, you are my favorite artist of all time. And he's so humble. He's like, oh, thanks, dude. That's awesome. And I was in a room with him and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Joe Quesada and among all these masters, right, that are modern masters of comics. And he was so humble. He's like, oh, you're among all these guys and me? And I was like, yeah, you. It's my childhood, man. Marc Silvestri. Now, a lot of these artists have drawn books that you can get from cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my top 10 favorite artists of all time. Keep an eye out on the channel. I'll be making more lists. If you have suggestions, please leave those comments down below. You know I love interacting with you all. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button if you have not subscribed yet. Hit that notification button or ring that bell of notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. You can check out our store on Redbubble. It's a really great way to support the channel. We have stickers, our logos on t-shirts, hoodies. I'll be sporting some later because I actually made an order. Hats, whatever you want. And we are also on Patreon, which gives you different access to different things because we have different tiers. It's a great way to support the channel if you can do so. More importantly, please everybody, don't forget to stay healthy, stay safe out there, and much love to you all.